Welcome back to our Mind Body podcast. If you're here for the first time, I'm your host, Devi Sundar, a founder of Therapies and Breathe Thrive. Mind Body Podcast is a platform where we talk about all things related to mind and body, health, happiness, and well-being. So today we have a special guest with us today, Mr. Michael Earle, and he has expertise in well-being and social work over 23 years. And it's my pleasure to have him here and join here to share his expertise and also some practical strategies for a well-balanced and happy life. Without any further ado, I would like you all to, I believe you all join me welcoming Mr. Michael Earle. Welcome, Michael, to our podcast.
Hi, thank you very much, Debbie. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Michael, we did actually before this podcast a webinar, and I really express my gratitude here once again for sharing your knowledge on that webinar. And so hence then we now connecting here again to get more of out from you in order to support the audience and also myself to get more knowledge and perspectives on the well-being. So I just see that I myself a psychotherapist for over 22 years now. So, and also a respiratory physiotherapist where I more dwelled into the anxiety, well-being part, quality of life, people with chronic illnesses, with respiratory illnesses. When we look into the well-being meaning, the Oxford Dictionary actually says like anyone who feels a sense of purpose and happy and satisfied, and those are all the meaning I can find in the Oxford Dictionary. And is it well-being? According to me, it's like knowledge and collaboration and having
hmm
compassion towards someone. That's my view on looking at well-being. So, with your expertise in well-being and dealing with people and helping people with mental and emotional challenges, how do you define well-being?
it's a really good question. I was thinking about that, Debbie. The way that I would sort of categorize it, or the understanding, is that it's the ability to deal with life's changing moods, because life changes from moment to moment. And so I look at well-being as having that ability to deal with those changes as they happen, in a positive way. So it's your capacity to deal with life, whether it's up or down. So that's how I generally look at well-being, and try to support people to be able to have that capacity to deal with it.
That's great. Great. So in order to like it all boils down to the resilience part, isn't it? Like how they're able to see it and handle it. If I understand from your view, you would look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important, Devi, because a lot of people can have an event in their life and it overwhelms them, but some people are able to deal with it. And I think that's where the well-being part comes in it, because of the things they've been doing on a long-term basis generally. So when there's a dip or even a high, they're still able to handle those both situations in the same way, which gives them a bit of sort of consistency. And so well-being is that ability to be consistent when things aren't going, as the way we want them to go.
That's good. And my next question would be about like your years of experience in well-being. Like you've been so 23 years of experience in the field dealing with people, the challenges, what you're talking about, people dealing
Mm.
with, and how they consistently see the challenges and overcome those challenges. The habits and behaviors is that what boils down to here. Have you seen any kind of changes in the well-being area itself, how people see or the systems deliver in your over your 23 years of experience?
Um, yes, Debbie, very much so, because as you said earlier, my original career was social work. So I have been a children and family social worker for 15 of those years. And what I was noticing, not just with the clients, the families, but also the professionals, at that time when I was starting up, there wasn't much focus on the well-being or the capacity of the workers. There was just a big focus on getting the work done, hitting targets and doing all the data, writing the reports, but there was very little focus on how the actual members of staff were doing, whether they were well or not very well, what was happening. And so I was seeing at that time a lot of people were becoming sick, unwell because of work or other things. and there wasn't much focus on supporting them. But I have seen, I'm glad to say, a change now where, mental health, well-being is taken very seriously. I think at the time it wasn't very much looked into. People just saying, well, don't worry, get on with it, you'll be fine. But now people understand that it's actually very much connected with how we perform at work. If I'm feeling positive or negative, it's directly connected to what's going to happen in the workplace. So I think workplaces, organizations, management are very much more aware now that it's a very important factor.
Yeah, that's the most of the part I wanted to talk about, how well-being at work, which comes to my towards half of our podcast after this, the first part. Before that, I wanted you to also tell us about when you talk about well-being, yeah, and it is more linked to the mental health aspect of people, like how people see mental health. Still, there is stigma existing, even every one of us, including myself. I've undergone that kind of isolation, moments of anxiety, depression during the pandemic lockdown. Yeah, everyone went through that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And still, we have the stigma of mental health. We have the stigma of going and attending or taking a well-being coach or attending a therapist. It boils down to, translates in people's mind that is admitting their weaknesses to handle them. Some people are embarrassed, ashamed. That's where the stigma comes down, isn't it? So, what are, from your perspective, there are loads of misconceptions about mental health and well-being. What is that you can actually, from your experience, see a lot of people have as a misconception around well-being?
Again, Devi, it's a really good question. And I was talking to somebody this morning actually about this, about the concept on how it's viewed mental health and physical health. Now, what I've come to see is that people don't really have a big problem talking about physical health. If they maybe hurt their arm or they've broken their arm or their finger, they say, well, yeah, I've got a bad finger, and people talk about it. But the moment you say the word mental and not even get to the word health, but the minute you say mental, people think that there's something wrong. And I
Mm.
think that that's the conception that I've
Yeah,
said mental health, that means I'm not okay. And how I view it is that it's the same as any other type of health. You can have good or bad physical health, and you can have good or bad mental health. There's nothing wrong with having mental health. We all have it. So as I said to my friend this morning, it's a scale thing. So we were sitting down having a coffee talking, and I said, right now, we're both experiencing good mental health. We're having a conversation, we're relaxed, we're chatting, we're having a bit of a laugh. And so our mental health is in a good position. And then I said to him, that could change in the next month. I could get a phone call right where we are, which done really bad news, which could send my mental health down. I could be depressed by that news. I could become very anxious, depending on what that news was, but it's just another area of my mental health. So nothing, the only thing that's changed is the circumstances, the perspective. The phone call changed my mental health. So before the phone call, everything was fine. So I wasn't depressed. I wasn't thinking about being anxious. But because of the phone call and the news I was reading or heard, it set my mental health down. So it's just like physical health. I'm okay now. I could walk outside and get hit by a car and I'd have to go to hospital. So I still have physical health. It's just in a bad state.
yeah.
And I think that's what we need to understand. We all have it. It's a scale. It depends where we are. And that's what we need to understand. So mental health, physical health, emotional health, we all experience it. It just depends where I am or you are today. It might be a different place tomorrow, but we're still of that same marker. We just have to have a look at it and understand.
Yeah, yeah, you're right, you're right. And also like it's I sometimes I actually go into so much detail. Like when we talk about health itself, the WHO organization defines health as the integrated well-being of all of these components, the physical, mental, emotional, and social, and to some degree to spiritual as well. I mean, like if those four components are integrated, that's the whole component of health. The label health can go. But when we talk about physical health, we don't even care about mental or the spiritual other aspects, which component, which is included in the health component, you know? And
Yeah.
so whatever you said, I do totally agree. And is there, did you face any challenges like when you're talking about these kind of things, like we are all having different spectrum, and yes, depending on their belief system and values, people view different things in a different way, and that's what is affecting their mental way of thinking and the behavior. Did you face any challenges in understanding people's challenges about perception of mental health and how that impacted your delivery of care to them?
Yeah, absolutely, Devi, because the one thing we have to take, the other component, which is really important, is people's cultural backgrounds. And that can play a really large part in the belief system.
Sure.
For example, in certain cultures, maybe mental health isn't actually discussed at all, or maybe they might put certain people with mental disabilities as an outcast from society. So they see them as separate, which
Yeah.
is very discriminatory, obviously, but that's how maybe that particular culture may deal with it. Other cultures may be more open to discussing it. So I'd have to be very sensitive to the cultural beliefs of that particular person, and that would involve obviously lots of questioning and asking about it. There are certain cultures that they just won't discuss it, or they look at it as what's the other thing? Yeah, like it's a curse. Okay. Like so some cultures, again, not all, some cultures say, oh well, that's a curse, that person's got a curse. And it's not a curse, it's just they've got bad mental health. There's something they've got, maybe bad depression or very bad anxiety. But that's how it's framed for that culture.
Mm,
So yes, you're right. What I have to do then is first try to understand the culture. Then once I've done that, is to try and explain how actually that's I understand your cultural view, but mental health isn't a curse. This is what it is, and try to get them to sort of see it from a perspective that's not just culturally based. Because if it's just culturally based, then they miss out on the full understanding of what's actually happening. So yeah, cultural barriers is a big one. Language is also another barrier that we have to get over. So there can be lots of barriers to people understanding what, is the basis of mental health, what it's all about.
mm, mm. Yeah, so you're right. And so those are the challenges you faced. And how was that system supportive in the delivery of care? So when you talk about, if I understand, you work with people in corporate companies as well, isn't it? Like delivering your lunch and learn sessions, if I understand. So how do you, in that, again, when you deliver a group session, you're focused on a theme. Am I right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that theme is more related to whatever you've agreed to deliver, but it's not going to give you opportunity maybe to understand what each individual in that group is going through. So do you have any kind of follow-up with people after lunch and learn, and how do you come about with this imparting that well-being concept in them?
That's a really good question, Devi. And what I've found is that I use the always take your lunch break metaphor for work because it's very relatable because usually at work there's some point you will have to take a lunch break usually. But then if there are individual questions, I can usually take those separately. So maybe after I've done the session, I will be able to have a bit of time where somebody might actually come up to me, or if it's physical or online, or ask me a question in the chat, and I'll be able to deal with that question on an individual basis. So I always leave a bit of space afterwards. Or if people want to contact me by email, they might say, "Oh, look, Michael, I had a question I did want to ask in the session, but so and so and so and so," and then I can answer questions outside of the session. But what I always find, it does always stir up lots of interest and questions, and which is what you want. You want the discussion. So it really does start lots of discussion, and people will sometimes look at their own practice and say, well, yeah, maybe I should be doing more of this self-care. And now I understand what it means. Because sometimes again, people hear terms, but they don't fully understand them. So I do take a bit of time to make sure that they understand what I'm talking about, and they understand what I'm trying to put across as a concept or an idea. So I always leave a bit of space for explaining some of the things I'm talking about.
Great. And do you have any kind of a screener kind of questionnaire before you deliver the session to them? Because like there is a misconception, like people, yes, you're doing a well-being session. In that group, there might be people with have a different spectrum of mental health. Am I right? And
Hmm.
there is a common misconception that mental health people are violent, but it's the opposite, isn't it? Mental health people are mostly the victims, and that's
Mm.
why they have a mental health issue. So do you have kind of a screening question? What way you actually recruit your groups for your session?
Right. What I will do, usually the person who approaches me, which may be one of the managers of the organization, I will have a conversation with them. So I will, as you said, Debbie, I will ask, look, are there anyone there with, any particular mental or physical needs or any fears, that sort of thing. So I will actually talk to them and say, look, if there's anything triggering or anything, people don't, if they don't want to take part in the session, that's fine because they might not want to do it. So
Yeah.
no one's forced to participate, but I will have a sort of like a screening conversation with the person who's actually recruiting me to do the session and make sure that I am sensitive to the needs of the group. Or if there's anything particular that maybe I can avoid, certain questions I can avoid. So I will, yeah, have a sort of a pre-screening conversation with the person who's actually asking me to do the workshop.
Yeah, yeah, great. So apart from that, like, are you more focused into the adult group? Because there is a misconception, like young people don't have mental health issues. Yeah, but it's the opposite. 20% of the adolescents are having mental health, and there is data from the Mental Health Foundation and Minds and other organization. So is there your support is extended to adolescents group, or is it like young people and children, or is it only for adults?
Right. I mainly work with adults, so that's 18 upwards, Devi. But I do have colleagues that work with young people. So if I do get some requests, I will sort of like signpost them to my colleagues who specialize in working with young people with mental health challenges. Because as you said, it's an increasing statistic, which is obviously not what you want, but that's just the way we are at the moment. I think lockdown, as you said earlier, has been a big contributing factor to that. It's just the increase in the numbers, and we're seeing our young people are suffering and still suffering. So yeah, it's not my specialist area. I can contribute and help, but I know specialist agencies, organizations that work with young people with mental health, so I will signpost them to those organizations for specific interventions.
Okay, okay, great, great to know that. So, let's move on to an important question, which might be you have more to talk about, the mindfulness and self-care, which you also had a little bit of insights for us in your webinar earlier, about the self-care part of it. And I was actually shocked by the figure, what we owe without taking a lunch break when you mentioned in that webinar, the figure of over £2,000 or something. Okay, but like just now, like I wanted to ask a question. Some mindfulness practices, which is quick and easy to practice for people, what would you actually guide or suggest for people? Some practical mindful strategies.
Right. One of the ones that I think we can do very easily, Debbie, is actually just going for a walk outside in nature. And again, it's just what I
Mindful
try
walk.
to, yeah, what I try to focus on is just simple things that are accessible because not
Yeah.
everybody has gym membership, not everybody has a bike. But obviously, depending on your level of mobility, most people can get out and have a little walk. And
Mm.
being outside in nature is really good for your mental health and well-being. It's relaxing. You're moving, you're getting out of your fixed environment, out of the house, getting some fresh air. So there's lots of benefits just by going for a little walk, just in your local area. You don't have to go far. I usually tell people that maybe just for 30 minutes, which is, you walk for 15 minutes and you turn around and walk back home.
Mm.
Because some
Yes.
people say 30 minutes, that's nice. No, 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 it isn't. It's 15 minutes. And then you turn around and go home. So wherever you are at 15 minutes, turn around and go back home. So it's just little practices like that. And last time we discussed about breathing.
Yeah.
And I know you're backing that up as well because generally we breathe on quite a shallow basis, quite shallow basis. We're always talking or whatever, or we're listening, but we don't breathe deeply. So deep breathing practices, and again, the square breathing that I did in the webinar, 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds again, and you just repeat that. That something like that can lower your heart rate. If you've got a racing heart rate, or blood pressure, breathing deeply like that for a minute will actually reduce your heart rate. So again, something very simple, no equipment needed. No one needs to even know you're doing it. You could be invisible. You just do
Sure.
it very quietly, and you can just help to sort of enhance your well-being. Just that there were just a couple of things, but yeah, they're simple practices.
Mhm.
But what I like about those, Debbie, if they're practiced frequently, they're very impactful. They will make a difference.
Yeah, true, true. I was actually I should totally agree with you. Physical activity is a main part when you're talking about the mindful walking, isn't it? And also the sensing all the natural sounds and while you're walking, a mindful walking. There was a Lancet study which I come across, like the group of people, they compared the adults who actually went through the physical activity and adults who actually didn't go through any physical activity. And people who didn't go through physical activity normally in a week have 3.5 days of mental health issues. Like commonly everyone goes through stress, yeah, and other burnout issues. So they found that happening in people having not having any physical activity for 3.5 days, but compared to people having physical activity in their part of their week role, having only 2 days of mental health issues. It's reduced from a number of burnout they feel, but still they have burnout. It doesn't actually guarantee that you will not have stress, you'll not have burnout, but it gives that kind of a strength to combat and reduced impact on their mental thing. It's
Yeah,
interesting, like when I was young, I was so fast in lots of things, okay? And then when
you're
you
still young, Debbie.
thank you. Thank you. But I'm talking about my 20s. I was so like you can actually I think relate to me. Like when you're in 20s, like you're so full of energy and you wanted to bring the world down and change everything one day, immediately, not one day, immediately. But like and as you grow up more mature, like you actually understand that there is some need patience and you have your present moment only more truthfully you can live. The future
Mm,
is something which is yet to come, past is gone. Those are all that learning, your life experiences. I wish I could have known in 20s, but most of us actually depend on that. And but I think it's a life's journey. We learn all these things. So now why I'm bringing this is like I started to actually, even when I'm sitting and eating my breakfast or lunch, I'm just actually trying to sense the taste. Previously, like it is my breakfast, I have to have it. Okay, it is my
yeah.
duty to have it. Yeah. And so mindful eating, something which I got into practice, and then waking up in the morning and then 10 minutes of just closing your eyes and saying things what I want to happen today. And
Mm,
that's actually makes me feel more in the moment thing, which I do a little into my daily life practice, which I like to share. Yeah.
amazing.
Right. So now, I wanted to actually talk about more about your advice, what you give to the young people. Yes, I do understand that you more focus on the adult, but like you do actually have a broader knowledge and you signpost to people, maybe young and adults. What would you actually give that people facing challenges to incorporate these little things into their life? What they can actually maybe a motivator or a trigger they can use for themselves to change their life in the present moment.
That's a really good question, Devi. And like you said, I work with adults, but adults were children, so it's just a different stage in life. So I'm mentoring someone at the moment, actually, a young person. When I say young, he's in his 20s. And it's basically very much the same sort of thing, to be very honest. And this is it. It's not about overcomplicating it. And this is one of the things I try to focus on. Sometimes you go to people, you go to coaches, and it's just really complex systems. And I'm thinking, why are you doing that? Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. So that's one of the things I'm very passionate about. Keep
Mm,
things simple so people could understand. Hence, doing things practical like exercising. I know it's a repetition of what we just said, but it's really important and it's simple and it's accessible.
mm,
So I try to take the mystery and sometimes it's fear. You hear well-being. Oh no,
yeah.
what's that? What does that mean? It just means looking after yourself. That's all it means. If you can, eat as healthily as you can, exercise, hydration. I tell people try to drink maybe, a few glasses of water a day, maybe two or three more than you did before. So, why drink water? Yeah, because it's good for you. You need, but your body is like almost 60% water. You need to hydrate. Some people are getting lots of headaches. And I say to them simple things like, are you drinking enough water? And they go, I haven't drunk water very much at all. I said, that might be an issue. So little things like that. I spoke to a friend a few months ago, Devi, and he said, "Oh, I'm getting palpitations." And I said, "How much coffee do you drink a day?" And he said, "I drink quite a lot." I said, "Try and cut it down, reduce it." He reduced his caffeine, and he said, "Michael, that's it. It's worked." I said, "There you go. Simple things. Very, very simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. And that's what I think we need to get the point across, that the changes are simple, they're small, and they're accessible. It's you don't have to go and do a special course. These are habits that we do every day, and it's just adjusting them, Devi. We adjusted some things, yes, we all eat, but are we eating the right things?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
might need to change our diet a little bit,
Yeah.
maybe a bit more vegetables or change something different. Maybe like me, I might have to eat less chocolates because I like chocolates and biscuits. So I have to reduce those things because they're not good for me, but I like them. So,
Mm.
I have to say, Michael, you can't have too many of those. It's not good for you. Change it, you know. So it's little things, simple habits, and we just encourage people to try these. And what you do, you try to see what works for you, Debbie, because it's very individual. Because what might work for me might not work for you. So I always tell people to experiment with things. Like, try this. If that doesn't work, try something else.
Mm.
You might not like walking. You might like cycling. You might like swimming. You know, go
Yeah.
swimming more and say, yeah, I love swimming. Do swimming. Go swimming. Do what you enjoy and incorporate it into your daily life or your weekly life.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, like Michael, I totally agree what you're saying. And also, I think like the social connection is another part, isn't it? Like you can mirror positive behavior if you're in a group of people where do positive behaviors. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can mirror a negative behavior if your group is also doing a negative behavior. Yeah, and to some
Yeah.
degree, we are. Though we want to be an influencer, we also being influenced by the environment, what we are surrounded by. Yeah.
Very
And
much.
when we talk about like earlier, we talked about the definition of well-being and sense of purpose and meaning, and it all boils down to what is the meaning or sense of purpose people are having in their life, isn't it? Like it can be a long-term purpose or a short-term purpose, what they choose for the day to implement, and that's good advice. Like that's about do whatever you want to enjoy doing it, and that's a good advice. And to me, it's actually the tagline comes here: less is more. So little things can make huge changes, isn't it, in your life?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
great. And let's move on to this kind of stress and burnout concept. Yeah. So well-being, people are having feeling less happy or less sense of purpose because they are tensed and burned out in a daily life. Yeah. Earlier you brought in the concept of work and people had been pushed to get on, moving on, not looked into mental health, but they are pushed on to do the daily task completion and whatever they have been loaded with on daily. Some people are overloaded and some
Mhm.
people are underloaded, and that causes stress as well for them. For me, I cannot be underloaded. It causes me a lot of lack of control. So, like, I mean that stress, most of people actually say, like, doing too much is what the concept most people look into as stress. I think like
Mhm.
the stress is actually about you sense losing control rather than the relating to the quantity. Yeah.
Mhm.
For example, like if you're in the middle of the traffic light, you lose your control and you're not able to reach your point or destination, you become stressed. When the traffic is resolved, then fine, you're just starting up back to reach that stress. So it's in my view, it's lack of control. What do you sense stress as?
That's a really good point, Devi. That's yeah, lack of control can give you stress. I think the other thing that can give people stress is external pressures. So, for example, and I am relating this to work, but and I'll talk about other things as well. But that's the most pertinent thing, work pressures, where basically you're getting extra demands from your job. You've got your work that you're doing at the moment, and then there's extra demands coming in. Maybe the management might say, "Oh, look, we need some extra work done today. Can you stay over? Can you take this home?" So that can give you stress because it's something that you're not expecting, or if it comes unexpectedly. So that can give you stress. You can get the stress at work,
Yeah.
and then at home as well. So with family life, just to relate it a bit more practical, you can get stresses at home. Maybe your children are getting into trouble at school. Again, that's unnecessary, unexpected stress. You're thinking, I just want my kids to go to school and behave, and getting reports from school that they're misbehaving. So then that's an additional extra stress that you weren't really wanting to sort of think about, but it's happening. And these things, like you said, they can cause burnout. They can cause, unnecessary pressure or unexpected. So you're right, because that is a form of losing control. because when everything's going right, that's control. I send my children to school, they go to school, they behave, they learn, they come home, no problem, no stress. I'm at work, I've got a workload, I finish it by the 5 o'clock every day, no stress. So when we lose control, you're absolutely right. That causes stress because then you're thinking, how am I going to manage this unexpected request? Because that's out of my control. I didn't come into work this morning expecting to do that. Or I didn't want my child to come home and I'm getting a report from school that he's misbehaving. So that's out of your control. So, yes, you're absolutely right. That will cause stress because it makes you worry about something you did not intend or have on your agenda. So, yeah.
So I think like then, sorry,
Oh, no, go ahead.
I think like then a lot of factor of acceptance comes into play, isn't it? Like because you're losing control, you turn
Mhm,
into losing control and saying like you're a failure, you can't achieve it. And then if you're trying to accept and see it like it is not a failure, but it's something which I've learned, and or for example, you mentioned a lot about the work and the family pressure. So the work part of it is about having that break time when you talked about in our resilience webinar,
mhm.
overloaded with pressure, having the break time and doing some of the strategy which you just earlier mentioned about mindful walking or just move away from the space. Would you think that might be that all comes into your well-being? That's you're taking responsibility for your well-being concept when you're stressed and burnout. Because stress and burnout is unavoidable. Everyone goes through it, isn't it?
Mhm.
Every individual human goes through it. And I think it's a process of renewal from
Yeah.
the stage where you before the stress and after the stress you get it to a stage of renewal like okay, I've not experienced this, okay, I'm here still, I've experienced this and I'm moving on more stronger with a lot of other things. Yeah, okay, so you agree with me. I see a lot
Yes.
of yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Because like you said, it is a form of renewal, but you have to experience it first. And also that, like, as you said, very much to acceptance, level of acceptance, because I think that helps to reduce the stress. Okay, it's happened, the event is happening, so you really can't do anything about it. So you just have to accept it's happening. And one of the things I do talk to people about is things that you control and things that you can't control and knowing the difference. That
Setting
is
boundaries.
really, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's really
yeah,
important because, it's a bit like with the weather. I know it's a simple concept, but it is easy. It's raining outside, so you have a choice. You can either go outside and get wet, or you can take an umbrella, but you can't control the rain, but you can control how you experience it.
yeah,
So you make a choice. Or you just say, do you know what? I'm going to stay in. I don't want to get wet. I- Or you might say, look, I've got to go to where I'm going and grab my umbrella and I'm going to go to the shop. But you can't stop the rain.
yeah. That's a very good example. I like it. Thank you. So my next question would be like, what is the choices you mentioned and your choice to accept and other things, but any one or two little things in your practical example you're given to your clients in terms of I believe so like when you're giving your sessions to your clients there might be some kind of questions related to this. Tell me some examples of what I can do for my situation or anything that you would like to share here in the podcast of your experience.
Um, yeah, I was talking to somebody, I think, yeah, again this morning today, and he was talking about focusing on jobs and work and everything. And I'm not saying he was getting stressed, but he was like just looking outside. And I said to him, what about looking at some of the things you can control? What about some of the skills that you already have that you could use? And his face changed. He went, oh, I didn't think of that. So I try to tailor my conversations to the individual. So depending on what they're saying to what they're giving to me, I try and use some of that and feed it back to them. So
Mm,
they are actually tapping into their own skills. So it's not about grabbing things. Sometimes we look for things on the outside, but a lot of the solutions are inside of us. And so I was actually redirecting him to say, look, you've got certain skills. And he said, yeah, I have. I said, have you thought about doing this or doing that? And you could see his face changing because he just never considered it. And we talked about deploying yourself rather than looking for employment. So we had this discussion about deployment and employment. And he was saying, that's a really great idea. I didn't think of that. I think I should need to look. I said, yeah, have a think. I said, have a think about it. So don't think about it now. Go home, sit down, relax, think about it, and see if there's anything that, your skills that you have already that you can deploy that will help you get to your end goal, that the big thing that you want to. And you could just really see his body language change, his face change. He just never had that perspective. And so that's what we help to do. We help to give people a perspective actually that they can do things. There's things that they've got already, there's tools they have already, but they just didn't realize. So, and that boosts your well-being as well. That gives confidence, that says,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't think of that. So you boost the person's confidence and their well-being when you actually tell them to look inside. It's not always outside. Look inside, see what you got. Maybe you can use some of those tools and skills.
Yeah. I love that line of like a lot of the answers are inside you. Like most of the resources are inside you for whatever problems you see through your eyes. Yeah, I totally agree and love that. So Michael, in your experience then, how would you actually tell someone to develop the positive mindset? Because that is a key for resilience, isn't it? To come back,
Mhm.
bounce back from the life's challenges. So what are the ways? Maybe I'm more interested to know from what you advise people.
Right. That's really a good point, Devi, actually, and I'm really glad you mentioned that because I have an actual little program that I work with specifically for people on this area, and it's called Thrive. So it's THRIVE, and it's about developing a Thrive mindset. Now, I brought this about when we were going through COVID because, as you can imagine, a lot of people were getting, no one's expressed or understood what was going on. They
Yeah.
never had anything like this in their lives. So what I did with Thrive is do this little presentation or a little workshop for people who are going through, quite stressful times, but helping them to develop and thrive through it.
Hmm.
And so each of the letters stands for something. So I'll just quickly go through that and explain a little bit about it.
Yeah.
So T is for Thanksgiving. So that's really about appreciating what you have in the moment, what you have now. So it's not about focusing on things you want or not about focusing on things that you've lost, but it's about focusing on things that you have, and it's
Hmm.
about showing gratitude. So really being grateful and practicing the act of gratitude. And again, just for the simple things you have, for being alive, for being, healthy, having
Yeah.
family,
Yeah.
friends. So you're taking the mindset and you're thinking, look, let's stop worrying about those again, things you can't control, but looking about what I've actually have and being grateful for it. So T is for Thanksgiving. And then we move on to H. H is for hope. Now, and Debbie, every in that situation, people were thinking what's going to happen, and you need to be able to talk about and give people hope. It's really important. It's an important factor in any part of our lives, but especially when you are going through a very trying time in your life, you need to be able to look at the hopeful things. So you need to focus on not what you are now, not what the stress, but what about afterwards, look, I'm gonna maybe gonna after work, I'm gonna go home and be with my family. So you think on something positive, or maybe after this is done, I'm gonna maybe meet up with some friends, I'm gonna connect with somebody, have a conversation, do something positive. So hope is really important because hope helps you to project out of the stressful situation where you are and to look above or away into something that's better. So it's just about refocusing that mind. Because if
Mm.
you keep your mind in a stressful situation, it will pull you down. Definitely it will pull you down. So you
Sure.
need hope. You need to be able to look over something where you are and into something better. And then after hope, the H for hope, you come for R for resilience.
Mm.
So what I talk to people about the 5 pillars of resilience. So I break resilience down for them because they say, what resilience? What's this? I never heard of it before. It's a new word, a new concept. And again, people really didn't think about resilience until pandemic hit and everyone was talking about resilience.
Mm.
So what I help them to do is to break it down. And the 5 pillars of resilience, I mean, there are other versions, but this is the one I take. So the self-awareness is pillar 1, mindfulness is pillar 2, self-care is
Mhm.
pillar number 3, positive relationships is number 4, and purpose that you talked about, Devi, purpose is pillar number 5. So
Mm.
what I help people to do is to understand, you break resilience down into these 5 pillars, and you need to have somehow just focus on some of these in your life and understand what they are, and again apply them to yourself. So it's not about affecting other people. This is about affecting yourself. So be aware of yourself, know your limits, Again, we talked about this, know your boundaries. So knowing how to say no is very important. So being aware of how you respond to situations, knowing
Mm.
what makes you upset, knowing what makes you happy. So all this is
Very,
self-awareness.
very important point. Know yourself, what makes you
Yeah,
happy, sad, and your needs and desires. Yeah, yeah.
100%, 100%, Devi. Mindfulness. Now, again, this is another term that came into sort of being very popular around sort of that pandemic and all this, people talking about self-care. But mindfulness, I break that down for people and I say mindfulness is just being present in what you're doing right now.
Mm.
Again, not about thinking what could happen. It's about enjoying the moment and being present in what you're doing. So, like you were saying, you're doing the mindful eating, Devi, you know, enjoy the food.
Sure.
Sometimes, and you're right, that's a really good point. Sometimes you rush our food, you have breakfast, you say, oh, I've got to have breakfast, you rush our food. No, slow down, enjoy the taste, enjoy the texture, enjoy the smell. What does this smell like? It looks, the look of the food as well, it looks wonderful. So just be mindful, take time to enjoy the present moment.
Mm. Mm.
That's what mindful, just slow down a minute, but I'm in a rush. I know you're in a rush, but just take it easy. 5 minutes, enjoy the moment. And that's what mindfulness is about. So I try to make it simple. I don't want to complicate things with people.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, self-care. People say, oh, when I'm being looking after myself, isn't it selfish? No, it's not. No, no, no. Understand, self-care allows you to be present for other people. So if I don't look after myself, how can I then help and assist other people, family members, friends at work? So again, we reframe the self-care understanding that you need to look after yourself.
Mm.
You need to wash, you need to eat, you need to go to sleep.
Mhm.
These are the basic things, basic demands of the human body. If you don't do these things, you will burn out. You
Sure.
will crash. You will be stressed. You will have more stress. So do the basic things. Self-care is not selfish. So that's what we say to people. Self-care is not selfish. It's a basic maintenance. Basic maintenance.
Sure.
Positive relationships, you touched on that again, Devi, very important. When you're going through a challenging time, you don't want to be around negative people. You just don't want them
That's the
near
biggest
you.
mistake we can make for ourselves, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So sometimes you have to seek out positive relationships, and it may mean, and I say this, with caution, there are some relationships that might have to come to an end because they're not benefiting you,
Sure.
and it's not helping your resilience. It's not building your resilience. You need to be around positive people that can feed you rather than drain you, because if you're being drained by a relationship, there'll be nothing left. You'll be depleted. You can't look after yourself, then you can't look after anyone else. So positive relationships that feed you rather than bleed you are what you're looking for. People that are strong like you or want to pull you up instead of pull you down, basically. And then purpose, again, Debbie, you touched on this already, so it just confirms what you said is absolutely right. You need to have purpose. People with purpose are more resilient.
Mm.
There's a very quick story that I share with friends about this mother. She was dying from cancer, and she had her only daughter. And she said to her daughter, "I'm not going to die until I make sure you get through university." So she kept working, and her daughter actually graduated, got to university, and then she passed away afterwards. So her purpose kept her alive. So she promised her daughter, she said, nothing's going to happen to me until I make sure you get to university. So because of purpose, it allows us to keep going. People with no purpose quit. They stop, they
Yeah.
give up, and the resilience levels are really low. So you need a purpose to keep you going. It gets you through the hard time that you're in. So that level of so all those pillars, self-awareness, mindfulness, self-care, positive relationships, and purpose build, they're all part of this. That's what makes resilience happen. And without those things, your resilience is not, it's not very good, not very high. So R for resilience, I is for innovation. So innovation is about having ideas, creativity, and sometimes being in a difficult situation triggers creativity because you're thinking, how can I make the best of this? I'm in a lockdown, what can I do? So having ideas, being innovative helps you to get through again a difficult situation. Because usually most inventions, I think I read this somewhere, most inventions came out of adversity. So something went wrong. Hence,
Yeah.
the person had to think about how am I going to get through this? What can I do? You know, It's darkness. What can I do? I need a light bulb. You know, um, I think it was what's his name? The guy who invented the light bulb. Ah, I should know this. Oh,
Thomas Edison.
Edison, yeah, Edison. So Edison's purpose, what he wanted to do was to provide light at any time of day. So that was his purpose, and that's why he invented the light bulb.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
everyone needs purpose and
yeah.
innovation and ideas.
It brings me to the tagline of necessity is the mother of invention. Yeah,
There you go. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So
So,
that's innovation. That's the innovation part. V is for value. I speak to all my clients and organizations. It's very important that you value your staff, but even higher value than that is that you value yourself. So individuals, I
yeah,
have to value myself, Debbie. I
sure.
have to know when to say no, I'm not doing that, or yes, or to be able to negotiate. And all those skills come through value. So if I don't value myself, I'll do anything and I'll go anywhere. But sometimes you have to say no, because I know who I am or what I want, or I know my purpose, so it's linked to purpose, that doesn't match up with my purpose, so I'm not doing it. So
Yeah.
that's about valuing yourself as an individual. It's very, very powerful, helps to build your resilience. And the final part, we've discussed it already, is exercise, but exercise and encouragement.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, you want people around you that's going to encourage you. And sometimes you have to encourage yourself, but that comes under value. But it's nice to have external people that encourage you to keep going. They say, yeah, I know it's difficult, Michael, but look, just keep going. I'll support you. Whatever you need, let me know. See if we can get through this together. So you need encouragement. So that's the Thrive, developing the Thrive mindset, THRIVE. That's how I break it down. And that's how I help people understand that they can get through difficult times and they can also use these pillars to build that Thrive mindset to keep them going.
wow, that's very interesting to try. And you've given a whole session to us in a very quick, with less than 5 minutes. Yeah, so
It was a
that's
bit,
amazing.
bit too
Thanks
quick.
for doing that. Um, So when I was listening to you, lots of concepts were running in my mind about like the self-care and value, and those are all the highlights which I picked up, and we talked about the mother of invention, necessity, and other things. But I think like the point here, what we all are trying to convey here to people is about to love themselves, be attached with yourself. Yeah. So we always
Yeah,
have this, you might have heard about the attachment patterns, what we deal with therapy, like avoidance, anxious pattern, and secure pattern. But like I think like when you whatever the attachment styles there, healthy or unhealthy, if you have applying a secure attachment style to yourself, you're
mm,
automatically going to do a secure attachment style, see other people through that vision. Yeah.
yes,
And the point for that, the foundation for that is self-love, isn't it? Like
it is.
loving yourself means that you're valuing yourself ultimately. There's no other way, like if you love because you value, you know your value, whatever says about you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Great. Do you want to add anything, Michael, to it, or can we move on to the next
Um,
question?
I think Debbie, that was fine. Now I'm happy to move on to the next one. But it's true that it really does stem from the self-worth,
Yeah,
that self-worth that you hold for yourself, because sometimes you won't have people to encourage you. So you do have to, encourage yourself sometimes. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Because a lot of emotional pain, what people are going through, it is a choice whether they are wanting to go through consciously or unconsciously. Yeah. And when they are going through unconsciously some of the emotional pain, that's where the projection happens towards other people, like in the anger burst out and other thing, because they are not healed from that emotional pain, whatever it is causing them. So that's one side of people well-being, sense of purpose is not there. And because the emotional pain, they have not healed from something happened to them and making meaning making of that. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of the positive mindset, resilience, that's fabulous. Thanks for giving that overview of Thrive, and that's very interesting. And looking into the workplace well-being, the next part. I've just found out some facts which I wanted to share in this podcast here. In UK, United Kingdom, the employee retention rate vary across sectors, both private and public sector. And the turnover rate, that is the employees leaving the organization, it is 35% currently. Yeah, so that's a huge number. 35% of people doesn't like the workplace where they work, and they are leaving the workplaces. And mostly probably due to their lack of support or lack of value, what they're seeing is not there. And there are many reasons. But like and also with your experience of being a well-being consultant, going to organization, giving the well-being sessions to people, I think my view is everyone has potential. Yeah. And you've been hired for a purpose, and people actually expecting you some delivery from you. And at the same time, they also needed some support. So every organization should have a retention package or retention strategy to retain or develop the employee. Yeah, because people, especially in the United Kingdom, when you're talking about, is multicultural. Yeah. And so there is clashes in the egos and clashes in the personalities in the workplace, which is projected in different ways, in shapes and forms. Yeah. So what are the challenges you, in your experience, see in employment sector where employees face it? Yes, the employer also faces challenges because they are also individual and human. But when it comes to the power dynamics, the employers are an higher power compared to the employee. Yeah. And when it comes to power, people mostly misconceive the power as to control others. Power is actually to support others' growth. Yeah. What
Mm-hmm.
I see, that's my vision. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you see, Michael? I just wanted, because in CIPD, you might have heard about CIPD, Chartered Institute of Personal Development, and
Yeah.
that fact sheets actually say that most of the factors of people leaving is because lack of motivation or inadequate support. Yeah. And
Mm.
so what you can share in this, like what are the challenges the employees are facing, and both the employees and employers from your view?
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. So this is a really important topic. And about 5 years ago, I did a piece of work for an organization in London. I won't mention the name, but it was an organization. And they were having very similar situation that you're talking about. And it was about just lack of motivation from the staff. And these were staff from the sort of Black and Asian minoritized group of staff. So was it quite specific? But what I actually picked out from doing the study and doing the research with this particular group of people in the organization, but there were three things lacking why the staff were going, and that was recognition, respect, and value. So recognition, respect, and value. These were the factors. It wasn't about money. Not money wasn't an issue. Okay. These are the three things that these staff were not experiencing in this workplace from management.
Mm,
And
mm,
so as you said, management have the power, but they weren't actually using it in the right way. So there was people, staff were feeling that they weren't no recognition, no respect, just for who they are, not because they were wonderful. I'm talking about basic respect and
mm,
value. On a respect level, I'll give you an example of some of the things that were quite hurtful to the staff, like not remembering someone's name or thinking that they looked like another member of staff when it wasn't them. So, and these micro things are very big in the big picture of why staff are not feeling recognized, respected, and valued. And so what it is, and I put this to the management, to the senior leadership team, that they have to take note of these, but not take note, but then take action.
mm,
And Devi, unfortunately, that was where the gap was. So it's fine to take notice, but then taking action, there was this gap.
yeah.
And it wasn't happening. Staff were unhappy and they
Mm,
left.
mm, mm,
So recognition, respect, value. These are
yeah.
the things that members of staff, want to experience in the workplace. Because Devi, as you know, you spend most of your working life in the workplace, sometimes 6 or 7 hours a day. If you
Mm,
work 5 days a week, that's a lot of time. So to not experience these things, recognition, respect, and value in work, it's going to affect, of course, it's going to affect you. And if day after day you're not having that, at some point you're going to have to make a decision again about valuing yourself.
Sure,
Am I going to stay here? Am I going to leave? Can I get through to the management? Can something be done? Yes or no? Again, there's noticing and the action. The gap in between is the problem. There was
sure,
nothing, no change.
sure,
So
sure.
yeah,
Um,
it's having to
Absolutely.
support staff when they're going through these things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Actually, this brings back to my experience as well. I'm an Asian, and I have experienced this respect, recognition, lack of that, in the workplaces. And I remember the comments like brown skins cannot survive here, and those sort of horrible comments, like even the basic value of respect not being given to your colleague, is it's really a traumatizing moments, like,
Yeah,
and this affects the people who have experienced it. And I'm not sure whether they have been people actually play with the words of unconscious bias, but where is the conscious inclusion in workplaces? That's This leads to another big type of
yeah,
topic.
conversation. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and but how do you then, like, in terms of the challenges, what people face, the minority groups, especially minority, and it doesn't go without say, people with white background also face challenges, yeah. But
Hmm.
comparatively, being had been had an opportunity to be a lead for a BAME staff lead in my previous workplace, and I've seen that there are both groups do undergo these challenges, the white and the minorities, but they are not well attended for the minorities as it is attended for the white groups. Okay, that's there, and there's no denial of that truth at all. And but how the minorities then can actually build their resilience, their confidence in speaking up for themselves, because a lot of minorities have this humility, yeah, and also they are humble in a way. And we spoke about you mentioned about the hope. Yeah, we are hopeful that we have a day here, we have a life here, and those lot of hopes, the humble nature of us is misinterpreted to be submissive, maybe to some extent. And I think, like, it comes again from the resilience and self-confidence, what we would like to represent ourselves as an identity. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how this well-being concept can be more, is it like then boils on the fact that all workplaces with minority groups should have more well-being sessions in a mixed interactive workshops where both cultural groups are mixed and shared and some kind of action plans? Is that something that you can think of, maybe a solution? Because every problem has a solution. It's in the way what we see. And you are one of the change makers now, because you're becoming a well-being consultant and you're making changes in people's mindset and supporting people. So I wanted to hear from you. What would you suggest as a solution going forward, a future for the challenges in the workplaces, strategies to change?
Um, Thanks, Debbie. A lot of what you said there whilst you were talking, I was just thinking how important it is for us to recognize, and we're talking about black and minoritized, and obviously our white colleagues at work also have challenges too. And I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think that it's very difficult to have change from the bottom up, from staff up. You know, it has to come down from management. Management have to be able to, again, recognize what's happening and be willing to make those changes. Because as much as we have, and I'm not saying it's not good to have supportive groups. Of course it is. You have supportive groups that go to support each other. It's very, very important. But for the actual change to take place, and we can suggest the changes, but we can't implement them because we're not in senior leadership. And again, that's another thing when there's not many of a diverse leadership team, that makes it even more challenging for changes, effective changes to be implemented. And I am working on something at the moment. I haven't completely got it ready, but one of the things I was working on, or the concept, or the statement that I've come up with, and I believe is true, is that for effective change to happen, courageous risks have to be taken. And that's the only way there will be change. Organizations, leadership have to take courageous risks, Debbie, because if they keep doing the same thing that they've been doing 20 years ago, we're not going to move anywhere.
No.
So that's the only way. And I would, love to hopefully one day speak to management organizations and move them towards taking courageous risks, because otherwise, we will be in the same position we are this time next year, having the same conversation. It's up to management to understand that by having a diverse workforce is an actual benefit, not a deficit. It's again understanding concepts that you have richness of multiple cultures in your leadership team. You're much more stronger than an organization that doesn't. So it's about, but are they willing to take the courageous risk?
Yeah,
That's the question. Do you want change? Yes, you're gonna have to take a risk. But I don't, well, I'm afraid that is the answer, Debbie. I believe personally, I haven't put
sure.
this theory out into practice, but
Yeah.
I've seen too many things stay the same. And when I've seen change happen and I talk to the people, they say, well, we were fed up of having it this way, so we decided to put this over here and put that over there, and it worked. So I said, so you took a risk. We didn't know if it was going to work. No, we just took a risk. We took a chance, and it did work.
Mm,
It might not have, but we could have sat down all day and said, oh, I don't want to do it, I'm afraid. So it's a courageous risk. You
sure.
have to be courageous. You have to say, if it doesn't work, at least we had a go. But if the status quo wants to be kept by those in power and they're afraid of change, they're afraid of taking a courageous risk, then nothing will ever change, Debbie. So there is a lot of emphasis on leadership teams, management, to if they're serious about change, because people talk about it, but they're not serious. If they're serious, at some point they will have to take a courageous risk in order for that change to be put into place. So,
Yeah.
so
When you
that's what I'm moving towards. I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah, sorry.
Mm.
When you're saying about the courageous rest, that mean then like training up the managers to how to support the workforce for minority, training up, having a support body for having a system of hierarchical system where the KPIs can be measured and monitored, because most of the things then boils on to how what the KPI set for a white colleague is different from what the KPI set for a minority colleague in a workplace. And that's
Right.
where a lot of conflicts, and it is all behind the doors and people don't see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is easy when it's not transparent to say,
Hmm.
no, 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 it's the same. Yeah. Where is
Yeah.
the transparency? Yeah. And what is the support system transparently being supported to colleagues? I think that's what actually goes into the word of courageous support or risks or something. What you mentioned, courageous
Yeah.
risk.
Courageous risk. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like I think like most of the recruitment panels in the organization don't have a minority as an HR colleague to support the recruitment. Yeah,
Right.
and there is
Right.
no, and that within even the white colleagues, irrespective of minority or white, there is actually gender biases in the salary scales. Okay, the salary points, which is not transparent. There's loads, and
Yeah.
it all comes to the well-being concept, Michael. That's why I wanted to bring that here in the podcast here, which is more relevant when you talk about the workplace well-being, because well-being is not something like people come up with from the home problems and come and sit in the workplace and moan about it. It is about what's happening to them at the workplace. Am I right? And
Absolutely.
also the sense of support is a community of support needs to be felt by the employee to feel motivated. Okay.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's where the motivation comes. Motivation is not that you're lazy. You actually feel the fear of being there, walking on the eggshells on daily basis because you don't feel people are including you, because your cerebellum is constantly, the hindbrain is constantly looking for, are you included? Are you safe in your workplace? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
that's where the lack of motivation comes in then. And people don't see the purpose in your work, in the work or value to bring there. Yeah. Um,
Mm.
I don't know whether you have a say on this one.
Uh, Debbie, I do agree with you. Yeah, it's really important that, when you go to work, you need to feel included, able to make contributions. That, I'm not saying you make a contribution and everybody jumps up and does it, but it's just that you feel that your opinion actually has been received, is taken on board. So you feel that you're making a contribution to your work, not just going to work, doing a job and going home.
Sure.
which again, when I did this particular study for this particular organization, a lot of the staff was saying that's what they did. They said, I just did enough work to get by.
Mm,
So they were
mm,
holding back their potential. These members of staff were on purpose just doing enough to get by. They weren't working to their full potential, which means the organization wasn't getting the full benefit of their skills, knowledge, and experience.
sure.
And inevitably, if they didn't, they still continued not to get, they would inevitably leave or find something else to do because they just, again, they weren't feeling that connection. It was
Yeah.
just like, well, we'll just use a little bit of, a little bit of you just do this, or maybe quite a menial negative job, and not really tapping into their full skills because they didn't think they had it. And this was just because they were being judged. Again, yeah, and that makes you feel bad. You go to work, you said, I've got all these qualifications and no one's asking me to use them. Or no one even knows, basically. They just think, all I could do is photocopying, as an example.
Mm,
So missed potential, the company doesn't benefit, you don't benefit. It's a lose-lose.
yeah. Yeah, I do agree. So then it brings down to a point here, Michael, then how do you then um, advise people, the individuals, because this member who's working, having a workplace issues and going home, yeah, they're bringing up all this kind of, I would put it down to microaggressions into trauma because microaggressions and macroaggressions are not well defined. Even the macroaggressions goes into under the label of microaggression for convenience in many places. So when they are actually bringing down this into the work home, yeah, as a human, you are loaded with all these negative emotions, negative treatments, and going home. How do then your loved ones can support you, and when you're going through this, how is that some open communication, or is that something? What are the other strategies? I would like to hear from you. How you can give some insights on that here.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. This is a really important part of the discussion because sometimes at work, as much as you try, and we're just being realistic here, you might not be able to get your voice heard. It just might be, that difficult. And I have to acknowledge that because sometimes it's very true. So we're not saying everything we're saying here today, oh, it's going to be easy. No, I acknowledge that you can be in work and it can be very frustrating because you make a point and nothing gets done. And so, as you said, Debbie, you take that stuff home. So I believe that one of the most important things that you can do, the home circle, family circle, or friend circle, is the ability to listen. So I'm not talking about having an answer. It's just allowing that person to talk about what they've been through. Maybe they've had a really bad day. They've had nowhere else to have an outlet. So it's just actually being able to be listened to. And I wrote a little quote the other day, which basically said the most powerful thing you can do when you have a conversation is to listen. You don't have to have the answers. You don't have to say, well, I think you should do this. Literally, just let that person speak because that is very therapeutic, especially if you've been in work all day, you've been frustrated and you haven't got anyone to talk to. Maybe, I don't know the colleague situation, maybe it's not very good. So you come home, which is your safe space. And if you have someone that may be a friend or partner or family member that will listen to you, not give an answer, just listen, that in itself is very therapeutic and it's a starting point. It's a starting
I
point.
agree.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, being able to be heard because some people speak, but they're not heard. And again, this is very demoralizing. If you're not, in the workplace, you speak, but no one is hearing you. That's very detrimental to your well-being. So just the fact that you can allow someone to be heard is very, very powerful. So
Mm,
that's my number one thing, the number one starting point. And then maybe from there you can do other things. But that number one, people need to be heard.
mm,
Everyone needs to be heard. Everyone has a story. Everyone needs to be heard. So you have to create the space and the time to listen and let that person be heard.
sure, sure. That's very true, Michael. And as I already mentioned, I agree with that. And do you think, like again, like listening to that person, being supportive and heard, and other things, and then trying to bring up the value of the family on that day? What is the purpose? Like if you're, it depends on the family size, isn't it? Whether you're a two or four with kids or whatever it is, then bringing up some change of the environment to the person and doing something what the person likes to do to help them to support that they are there and present for them. And those are little things which can actually then, as you say, take it from there after listening. Great. So thanks, Michael. We have come to an end, close of the session, and
Okay.
I really enjoy listening to you. A lot of things, what you, and especially the thrive and loving yourself, and those are all the highlights of this. I would like to just bring it down as a close here. And so,
Hmm.
well-being is basically people can actually be their own savior for developing that well-being concept, well-being mindset. Okay, and rather than waiting for a savior to come for them, that's something which we all, I think, including myself, we all should actually build that resilience, mindset, self-confidence, and
Yeah.
towards our well-being and sense of purpose. And thank you once again for being on our podcast. And I hope our audience have received a great value on having you here. And I would like to hear your few words if you would like to share at the end.
Yeah, Debbie, just wanted to say thank you very much for having me on your podcast. I've really enjoyed talking with you and sharing ideas. I think it's really empowering when we can actually, share and just talk with each other. So thank you very much. And I just want to say to everybody that, one of the most important things you can do, regardless of the situation you're going through, is to value yourself, just to understand how important you are. And even if no one else tells you, it's good to realize that and to actually take that on board that you are a valuable person, you're unique, and there isn't anyone else like you, and only you can do what you do.
Great, great. Thank you, Michael, and have a good day. As we draw the curtains on today's exploration into the realms of well-being and mental health with our esteemed guest, Michael Earle, it's clear that the journey to understanding the complexity of our mind and well-being is an ongoing process. We have explored different concepts and dissected prevalent misconceptions and eliminated the pathway towards holistic health and well-being. Michael's insights have been invaluable, reminding us that mental health is not merely the absence of illness, but a dynamic equilibrium encompassing various facets of life. And well-being is not merely being happy or a concept of happiness, it's beyond happiness, a sense of purpose and value in life. From the significance of self-awareness to transformational power of self-compassion, each idea shared serves as a beacon guiding towards a more resilient and a fulfilling existence. As we bid farewell, let us carry forth the wisdom gleaned today, nurturing our minds with kindness, cultivating connections that nourishes our soul, and embracing the journey towards well-being with open arms. Together, let us continue to foster a culture of understanding, empathy, and support, ensuring the conversations around mental health and well-being remaining vibrant and inclusive. My heartfelt gratitude to Michael Earle for the invaluable contributions today, and to our audience. Amidst the life's ebbs and flow, may you always prioritize the care of your mind and your well-being at the foundation of your flourishing life. Until we meet again, stay mindful, stay resilient, and may your journey towards well-being be filled with grace and growth. Signing off, Devi Sundar.